If we think that it's just the doctor's job to prescribe the right treatments, the right drugs, and I have no role.
Biggest revolution in medicine.
Dr. Terry Wahls,
a physician who reversed her own autoimmune disease process with a holistic protocol.
She shares how she took charge of her health by researching and targeting her mitochondria.
With a supplement protocol,
electrical stimulation of muscles,
and a specialized diet based on functional medicine principles.
There is no room for empty calories. We know that diets that are so rich in have higher rates of cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autoimmunity, anxiety, depression. Maybe I was wrecking my health by not eating meat. All of these things that we're spending billions of dollars to use drugs to treat, that we could greatly reduce if we ate the things to remove: gluten, dairy, and eggs. Those are the three most common sources of abnormal immune response to the food you're eating. I also want people to reduce and preferably eliminate.
You are given a diagnosis that sounds more like a death sentence or a life sentence.
I start walking in the hallways at the hospital with 2 walking sticks. Even the best treatments are not stopping the decline.
You're just waiting to die.
Hi, my name is Aggie and this is Biohacking Bestie. The one-stop shop for a modern queen, where you can find biohacking courses, self-growth courses, and where you can find the most incredible community of women so you can hit all of your biohacking goals and beyond.
Dr. Terry, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. One of the many reasons why I wanted you to come on the show is because your story is just so helpful. A lot of times when I talk to doctors, often you hear that things are not curable, and it's almost like you are given a diagnosis that sounds more like a death sentence or a life sentence of something, and your story is absolutely completely different. So could you share with my audience how magically you were able to turn your life around?
So I'm an internal medicine physician, and when I was 45, out walking with my wife, a half mile from home, my left leg becomes weak. Dragging it a hobble home. I see the neurologist who does an exam and starts ordering the test. It takes about 3 weeks. And during that time period, I think about the fact I've had 20 years of worsening electrical face pain consistent with trigeminal neuralgia. So I know I have a progressive illness, and so I don't want to become disabled. So actually I'm praying for a rapidly fatal diagnosis. 3 weeks later, I hear multiple sclerosis. I do my research. I find the best MS center in the country and see their best physician, take the newest drugs. 3 years later, I hear tilt, recline, wheelchair. That's when I'm like, okay, it's very clear the trajectory of this illness is pretty terrible. And I go back to reading the basic science, the animal models of multiple sclerosis and other diseases with shrinking brains. And I decide mitochondria are what's driving disability, so I gradually create a supplement protocol for my mitochondria, which helps my fatigue a little bit, slows the speed of my decline. Then I discover a study using electrical stimulation of muscles. I talk to my physical therapist, and he gives me a test session, and we add that to my physical therapy. At about that same time, I discovered the Institute for Functional Medicine. They have a course on neuroprotection. I take that. I have a longer list of supplements. And then I have this big aha, and I'm sort of embarrassed how long it took me to have this aha, because I'd already been doing a paleo diet for 5 years. But, what if I redesign my paleo diet based on this long list of supplements I'm taking, figure out where those ingredients are in the food supply. So that's a few more months of research. And I start this new way of eating December 26th of 2007. Now, for your listeners, at that time, I am so weak I cannot sit up anymore. Not in a regular chair like I am now. I'm in a zero-gravity chair with my knees higher than my nose. That's how I staff the resident clinic. That is how I take my meals at home. And I can take
So
this.
just to slow down for you, everyone listening right now, if you don't even know what MS is, it's basically, I have an uncle who has one, and it's this and a good friend of mine, and just being affected by the disease secondhand, I can tell you that it's one of the most challenging things to go through. As you get different, I'm not really sure what they're called, and I'm Polish, but I know that like they come in waves.
Right. You,
Right,
you
so
get
sometimes you can-
relapses where you have acute symptoms, and then you have more lesions in the brain. You gradually recover. But after age 45, there aren't any acute relapses. Then you're really in the progressive phase of the illness. And that had happened to me. I was in the progressive phase in the wheelchair really very soon after diagnosis.
which is crazy. So imagine still 45, pretty young, but like in general,
That's very
like you're
young.
living your life, and all of a sudden you get this death sentence, almost life sentence, knowing that every day it's just going to be a little bit more difficult for you to first get out of bed, then to eat, then to be able to function. And it almost feels like, to be honest, you're just waiting to die, and hopefully you're buying yourself some time. And that I
Absolutely.
can just only imagine what is happening in someone's brain as they hear that diagnosis, because it's really easy to hear that story. It's like, oh wow, that's cool, Dr. Terry, but like, I can't relate. But it's not even about the MS. It's about this idea that you're a doctor, you feel like you're already eating kind of healthy. I can't really see you shoving just potato chips, and still the disease is getting worse. It's 3 years in, you feel like you're doing, and you're super educated, you know where to look, and yet there are no answers. And you're lying on the bed with your knees higher than your head. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
like-
I'm in what's called a zero gravity chair. It's sort of what the astronauts use in flight. You lean way back, gravity holds you in the chair, and I have trigeminal neuralgia. It's been getting relentlessly worse now for 27 years. I'm beginning to have brain fog, and I can take just a few steps using 2 walking sticks. And in the summer, my boss, the chief of staff, had told me he was reassigning me to the traumatic brain injury clinic, and I'd start that new job in January. He described it. I'd be seeing patients without residence. I'd be doing the exam and the notes along with the rest of the medical team, a psychiatrist, physical medicine rehab doc, social worker, speech pathologist. And at the time when he described the job, I was like, okay, physically I won't be able to do that. So, Jack and I talked about that. I said, so come January, I'll go to the new clinic. I can either do the job or I can't, and then I'll finally have to apply for disability. So it was a very difficult summer because I'm assuming I'm going to be applying for disability in January finally. I discovered electrical stimulation of muscles. My physical therapist gives me the test session. We add it to what I'm doing. And I can do these little tiny mat exercises, 10 minutes. If I do more than that, I don't have enough strength to go to work. And I have the supplement cocktail. Then I want to redesign my paleo diet. That's a few more months. So as I said, I start December 26th. At that point, I begin to have brain fog. My fatigue is severe. I can't sit up. I can't sit up in a regular chair like this. If I did, I'm so exhausted that I have to stop and just lay flat, be in bed for about 24 hours. Then I start this new way of eating. Then January comes, and I have to go to the traumatic brain injury clinic. The first 2 weeks, I just watch my new partners. It's like, okay, I should be able to do that from my tilt recline wheelchair. And then the third week of January, I have to start seeing patients. So first Monday, I come back home and I tell Jackie, like, well, that really wasn't too bad. And then on Friday, so I've done this all week, and I say, I think I can do this. And by the way, honey, could we swap out my zero gravity chair for a regular chair? Because I'd like to sit at the table with all of you.
Wow.
And so, and I have a meal with the family sitting in a regular chair for the first time in many years.
How did it feel?
That was, pretty exciting. And then at the end of January, my physical therapist says, Terry, you're definitely stronger. Let's have you increase your exercises 10 minutes twice a day, then 15 minutes twice a day, then 20 minutes twice a day, then 30 minutes twice a day. And then I start taking my electrical stimulation device to work with me, and I figure out how to get extra sessions in while I'm at work. And then, I no longer recall how soon this was, probably March. Maybe later February, I start walking in the hallways at the hospital with 2 walking sticks.
Wow.
And my colleagues are like, "Oh my God, are you on that new Tizabri?" And I said, "No, actually, that didn't work. So I've been off that drug for quite a few years." And I show them my eStim device, talk with them about what I'm doing, and then they see me walking with 1 walking stick, and then they see me no walking sticks. Like, oh my gosh, so exciting!
Miracle, some people would say.
And then, like, oh my God, Dr. Wahls, you're walking. And of course, everyone's thinking it's some new wonderful drug. And I explain, well, no, actually, it's not. It's then I go through this, complicated supplement, diet, exercise, really a total lifestyle revamp. And then, I'm now walking around the block, and I'm telling Jackie I'd like to try riding my bike, which I've not done in 6 years. And her response is, well, honey, if it keeps going well, maybe in the fall. If things keep, this trajectory, maybe we can try in the fall. Well, I think it was just 2 weeks later. It's Mother's Day, and I really want to ride my bike. So we have an emergency family meeting. And Jackie, bless her, she tells my 16-year-old son, who's 6'5", Zach, you run alongside in the left. And then she tells Zebby, who's 13, you run alongside in the right, and she'll follow. And we all get into position. And then, there's no cars coming. She says, okay. And gives the, signal to get on the bike and go. And I bike around the block. And that big 16-year-old boy, he's crying. The 13-year-old girl, she's crying. Jackie's crying. And as you can tell, when I relive that moment, I'm still crying, because that was when I could say, like, well, how much recovery might be possible? How close to normal might things become? And so every day I biked a little more. And then in October, Jackie comes home and says, honey, I signed us up for the Courage Ride. It's 18.5 miles. And however far you go will be great. Now, at that point, the farthest I'd gone was 8 miles. But
just quite a lot on a bike as well. That's more than I do.
That's a lot. That's a lot on a bike. And we crossed that finish line.
Wow.
And of course, I was really quite tired, but like, oh my God, how exhilarating. And of course, this really changes how we think about disease and health. It will change the way I practice medicine, and it will ultimately change the focus of the clinical research that I do.
Wow, what a story. I have this alone just unravels so many questions, right? Because it's, I'm very curious of how do you find, as a doctor, it's almost more difficult as a doctor to trust your intuition and create a protocol that doesn't rely on medications. It's harder for a doctor because all you were taught.
Oh yeah, way harder. Keep in mind, I had my first neurologic symptoms in medical school in 1980, and I would eventually see neurology, take a variety of drugs, none of which really worked, and would eventually get into pain clinic, and then placed on gabapentin, which was somewhat helpful. But it was a progressive disease. And I'm diagnosed with MS, and I do my research. I take the newest drugs. So I treat my diseases aggressively but when it's clear that even the best treatments are not stopping the decline, in that I'm clearly on track towards becoming bedridden by my illness, potentially. And then when I start getting brain fog, that's it's clear I'm on track to become potentially demented, and potentially dying with intractable pain, because nothing has stopped the relentless march of the trigeminal neuralgia.
Well,
It took a long time and an immense amount of suffering for me to begin to start reading the basic science and start really realizing, wait, am I doing all that I can? I can still read, I can still learn, I can still have theories. And at first I was looking for off-label drug studies. Then it finally occurred to me that I should be looking for supplement studies. And so I headed down that route. And I had already started making changes to my diet. And I would eventually revamp everything that I was doing and realize that, yes, I can work with my neurologist for the FDA-approved treatments. But I got to be sure that I'm doing all that I can in terms of what we now call the modifiable lifestyle factors.
Oh, beautiful. I think it's such a good question. So if you're listening to this right now, imagine what a powerful question to ask. We often think we are doing everything we can, but when you reflect back, am I really? How much am I married to my lifestyle, my favorite ultimate latte, or whatever it is that you're listening to, and you just feel like you may be I feel very passionate about. I work, and women make up 80% of autoimmune diseases, and so there is this idea that I'm doing everything that can be done. But I also have friends who have MS. I have friends who had cancer and have never been, they said it doesn't really matter if you change your diet or lifestyle, because it is what it is. And that's just that this connection is super interesting. And I think that's the biggest revolution in medicine, where the doctors were actually we were underplaying the importance of the environment and the diet, which is
absolutely. And if we think that it's just the doctor's job, him or her, to prescribe the right treatments, the right drugs, and I have no role. I say to you that you are down the path of learned helplessness. You know what? I have no responsibility. There's nothing for me to do here. I'll just take whatever it is that the medical team tells me to take, and I have no responsibility. Well, that's very disempowering. Very disempowering. And I think it's important to realize that there are always things that we can do that make our circumstances a little bit better. There's a really wonderful point of view by Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who was imprisoned in Auschwitz.
In Poland, where I'm from.
And he describes, the really horrible acts of cruelty that he observed, and the tremendous acts of love and devotion that he observed. And the reality is, between every event of our lives and our response to it, there's a little space that you control. And there's always a choice that can make that circumstance a little bit better. Even in Auschwitz.
Yes. It's such a beautiful book. Men's Search for Meaning, right? Is Dr. Frankl's the name of the book.
Yes, it's a beautiful book.
A must read. I think it's super interesting. You touched on a couple of important points that we massively align for, because I think there is this expectation that it's a doctor's responsibility for me to be healthy and to take ownership of my health. But to give doctors some grace, they don't know how you eat. They don't know your childhood traumas. They don't know your genetic makeup. They don't know exactly your diet you're going through, your nervous system, what's happening in your head. And to expect a total stranger that can see you for 30 minutes and looking at your lab results and make a diagnosis that would save your life is a bold ask of any human, right?
And often they have In the follow-ups, maybe 5-7 minutes, maybe 10 minutes.
It's like, when you put
And
it that
so
way,
they don't have a lot of
it
time.
really comes down to no, like it is your job. And I absolutely love that, you don't have to be an expert in or take all the medications. The fact that you had, the courage to say, wow, what if something as simple as diet and supplements can help me? And your transition from taking drugs to going towards supplement is also probably, what was it like for your doctor friends to feel? Did they feel like you're crazy and you lost it?
Well, I would go in and say, I want to take these supplements, and they would put them in my medication list. Like, well, there's no contraindications. And I took them. And so I had a coenzyme Q, B vitamins, creatine, and I think it was carnitine, lipoic acid that I was taking. And after 6 months, I thought, not a damn thing's happened. I'm quitting this. I'm just making expensive urine. And 36 hours later, I just couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't function. And 72 hours later, my wife came in and said, honey, why'd you take these again? And so I did. And the next morning, I could get up. And I was back to my usual level of fatigue. And I thought, wow, that is really interesting. So 2 weeks later, I did the same thing. I stopped everything, and I saw at 36 hours I really couldn't function. I waited 72 hours to restart everything up, and then I was back to my usual level of fatigue. So my aha from that was, I'm learning stuff that my neurologist doesn't know, and my primary care doesn't know. And so now I am really excited to read the research. I'm on the university's research review committee. It's called the Institutional Review Board. And I tell them I want to review all the brain-related clinical trials. So I'm getting more and more comfortable reading research. And I'm slowly adding some more supplements based on what I'm reading and learning. And it was actually a review of one of those studies that introduced me to the idea of electrical stimulation of muscles. Because they were using that for people who were paralyzed, who were never going to walk. But I thought, I wonder if that could help me. And I had to convince my physical therapist to, let me try. And finally, my neurology and my primary care team were like, okay, so what are you trying now? What new? And they were open to whatever I was doing. Put it into the database to see if I had any, supplement drug interactions, and then said, well, just let's see what happens.
Wow, so powerful. And I think taking like your health into your own hands also, when we feel, it's often hard for us to feel what supplements are doing. It's very easy to dismiss it, right? Like, when people take vitamin D, it's like the baseline can be very different for different people. So it might not feel like an immediate response, but you notice that it's only when you stop taking all the supplements, you're like, oh,
Yes.
okay, now I see it.
Oh, well, I definitely felt better taking those, so I'll go back on them. And I that's what I tell my patients is, when you add a supplement, the change may come on so gradually you can't perceive it. And then, and if you can't, after 3 months, you can just say, okay, I'll stop it. And you may discover that, well, now when you stop it, you can definitely tell a difference.
And so let's talk about the diet, right? Because I think it's very interesting, even if you're not really struggling with MS or any autoimmune condition, if this diet reverses, or it's a very powerful word, but it's very appropriate, reverses autoimmune conditions, wouldn't it be fair to assume that for a person without these conditions, that diet would be beneficial as it would create a healthy environment, correct?
Oh, absolutely. We're all going to age. We know from the biologic processes, beginning around age 40, our hormone levels are going down, and the aging processes are accelerating. And so if you want to have a healthier aging process, mental clarity, and I'm right now rooting to be mentally clear to 120. When I get there, then I can reevaluate, do I want to go longer than that or not? I want to still be doing my research and presenting our findings when I'm 120, so we'll see. So that means I really want to take great care of myself, because it's not just to be alive. I want to be still jogging, still hiking, still gardening, playing with the little people in my life, however many generations we have at that point. So that means I want great nutrition. I want physical activity, community, meaning, and purpose. There is no room for empty calories. There is no room for us to consume calories that have no nutritional value to us. Over the billions of years that life evolved, all of the food and the nourishment play a really important role in how our cells can do the biology of life. If you're eating, processed foods, flour-based, white flour-based foods, sugar-sweetened beverages, you're displacing calories that have nutrition that your cells need with calories that have no nutrition that your cells need. So what you're doing is you're eating to create starvation for your body and your cells. You are wrecking your health by each delicious, lovely, sweet, delicious, everywhere food that big food is trying to convince you to spend your money on. Instead of eating
the word delicious, but I might even not agree, because when I eat processed food, it's delicious. When I take a break and go clean, that's no longer delicious. Like, isn't that funny?
That is exactly right. That is
Because I have a
exactly
feeling
right.
you wouldn't find
So-
this delicious. You would have a sip of soda and you're like, oh, I can't even.
Ugh.
I can't have soda. It's so sweet that I'm
And-
like, I get like a visceral reaction to sugar. I was like, oh, like,
So, unfortunately, many people who have, in the average American westernized diet, 1.5 servings of vegetables a day. 5 to 10 servings of white flour-based products, breads, cereals, pastas a day. And so we know that diets that are so rich in sugar and the flour-based products have higher rates of cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autoimmunity, anxiety, depression, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, heart disease.
Yeah.
All these terrible diseases that cause so much suffering.
and so, yeah,
The people who eat, sufficient protein and these radical things that our grandmothers knew, called vegetables, they have more mental clarity, better moods, less cancer, less heart disease, less diabetes. All of these things that we're spending billions of dollars to use drugs to treat, that we could greatly reduce if we ate more vegetables, less flour-based products, and more protein.
beautiful. I want to, I actually want to walk us through, because obviously I have a hard time believing that as you got your first diagnosis of MS, you were eating cookies and chips and sugars.
Well, no, I wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
So, actually,
I'm sure to a degree,
when
but
I
I'm
went
very
to
curious,
medical
what
school,
was your diet like before, after the diagnosis,
So-
and then what's your protocol?
yeah. I'm a farmer's kid, and as an adolescent, I became a rebellious farmer's kid who became a vegetarian.
There you go.
And my parents told me, you're wrecking your health with this decision, which just made me more resolute. Then in medical school, cholesterol was the boogeyman, and so I went on a low-fat vegetarian diet.
Yep.
Beans and rice and vegetables. And then when I'm diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, the only person who was saying diet really mattered was a fellow named Roy Swank, who talked about a low saturated fat diet. He was not so resistant about sugar, unfortunately. Although still, I still was not eating a lot of sugar and sweets. But I did a low-fat vegetarian diet, and I had a fair amount of grain, whole grains. Now, we since know, and then one of my neurologists introduced me to the work of Lauren Cordain. So second year of my diagnosis, I'm still walking at that time. I got introduced to the Paleo diet. And so I read a bunch of Lauren Cordain's papers and books. And so after some prayer and meditation, I went back to eating meat. And my dad had already died several years earlier. My mom had died about 6 months before I made that transition. So I had all these conversations in my head with my parents, like, Mom and Dad, you were right. Maybe I was wrecking my health by not eating meat. And then the next year I needed a tilt-recline wheelchair. And so I'm still declining. But I'm like, well, I don't know how long it takes to repair the damage that clearly that I knew had already been going on for 20 years. So
20 years.
at least I'm doing something.
Wow, that is very, very powerful. We have a similar story. I was vegan for 8 years, also low fat, high grain, high, bean, legume diet that I was on, and very similarly had a lot of health issues. My hair was falling out in patches. I had leaky gut. My skin was breaking out. I'm truly depressed and suicidal, and just couldn't get out of bed. And it took a lot of prayer. So for me, it was my grandma, because my grandma was always said, you don't have to eat a lot of meat, but you have to have a little bite every now and then. That was her whole thing. She was like, you're gonna make yourself sick. I'm like, Grandma, you don't know, because Polish grandma, she was making, using lard and meats and stews and all of this, and I obviously felt like I know better. So it's quite funny that we have a similar story, and 20 years on the low-fat vegetarian diet is so interesting, because a lot of people, there are experts out there that this is exactly how they would treat an autoimmune disease. They would tell you.
Yeah, that is super
Right?
interesting.
Like,
There,
even
and there are
medical
folks that
medium
are.
says, I used to follow his advice, and it said low-fat, vegetable diet that would include, to heal your autoimmune. And here you are saying that this is something that got you into a wheelchair.
Well,
and a gravity chair.
yeah, it certainly was not helpful for
Yeah.
me. And I do think when we talk about what are the mechanisms by how diet leads to health decline or health improvement, to understand that, we are more than just my DNA running the chemistry of my body. I rely on the trillions of bacteria, yeast, viruses that live in my gut to also act on the food that I'm eating and make little molecules that get into my bloodstream and help me run the chemistry of life. It is probably true that, and this is a super interesting area of research that we're doing, is we collected, and we collect microbiome samples in our clinical trials. And so we're using artificial intelligence to understand the relationship between the bacteria that you have to help us understand who will respond better to the swank diet, the low saturated fat diet, who will respond better to the modified paleo diet, also known as the Wahls diet. And I expect that there may be a day where we could take some saliva, some poop, some blood, and then come back and tell you, like, okay, given your genetics and the critters living in and on you, these are the diets that would have the most rapid benefits for you. And these are the diets that may or may not have any impact. And these are the diets that may accelerate your problem. And that'll be super interesting. Or you could come at this like, okay, let's look at our evolutionary history. We know that humans have migrated out of equatorial Africa all across the globe. We eat a wide variety of foodstuffs and had reproductive success. And that ranges from a diet that has about 80 to 100 grams of carbs, a variety of carbs in meat, down to a few societies that are carnivores. They eat meat, fish, blood, eggs, milk, and some variation of those things. And so we could look at our evolutionary history and say, yep, there are a variety of diets that we could have success with. None of them, from our medical anthropology standpoint, have more than 100 grams of carbs. None of them.
A day. So, yeah.
A day, correct.
So I guess what my reflection was that it's when people say they have tried everything, and I have a lot of vegan diet, like not a lot, but quite a few friends that were vegan and also struggle with cancer. And I remember thinking, like, I've tried everything, and I'm like, how about changing the diet? And sometimes, like, to your point, like, maybe genetically some people can thrive on a vegan diet, but questioning everything you know about a diet and every single, it's like one of the most beautiful exercises. Even as I eat meat right now, I always question, like, how does it actually feel? Do I actually feel stronger and more powerful? I just, I had a steak for the first time in 2 weeks because I was doing a preparation for a dieta for a trip. Anyways, having that steak after 2 weeks was the best experience of my life. I felt so strong. I was like, oh my God, my body is so happy right now. I had a friend on a show not too long ago where she said that she was vegetarian, vegan for 10 years, and she woke up from a dream and she was dreaming about eating a steak. And so she drove to a supermarket, got a steak, and ate that piece of meat in the parking lot because her body got to a point of, like, I really need it. So sometimes we want to override those needs that everybody has.
And I'm mindful that there are some people who are spiritually committed to being vegetarian or vegan. And my caution to them is you have to, you may be risking your health. I want you to be sure that we are monitoring your nutritional status, and you'll probably need to have supplements to make sure you don't become ill. And having your children be vegans, oh my God, that's definitely a problem for those kiddos and their developing brains. And so, I have big concerns for vegan children.
Amazing. So let's talk about the diet, because we like keeping people in the loop, and those who are not familiar with your protocol, what are the things on the to eat list and not to eat list? Because that's just
okay. So we'll start with in general, whenever you're making a diet change, if you start with, here are the things I'm going to add to my diet first, and then here are the things I'm going to reduce or eliminate. And I want to encourage all the listeners, have a family conversation, and doing this as a family, you'll be much more successful. Yes. So the things to add, at the base, and I have multiple levels, level 1, 2, 3, and then an elimination diet. At level 1, I am ramping up the vegetables because I don't want people to be hungry. So we're talking about green leafy vegetables, spinach, kale, collards, so green leaves, raw or cooked. The deeply colored stuff, beets, carrots, berries, things that are pigmented all the way through, and then sulfur-rich in the cabbage, onion, mushroom family. And then I want to have protein, sufficient protein, and while I prefer it be meat, fish, poultry, I recognize that some people are absolutely committed spiritually to their being a vegetarian. Then we talk about how to do that on a safer level. So that's the stuff to add. The things to remove: gluten, dairy, and eggs. Those are the 3 most common sources of abnormal immune response to the food you're eating. And I also want people to reduce and preferably eliminate added sugars. Certainly sugar-sweetened beverages. And that I recognize that having food swaps, having some examples of a gluten-free, dairy-free version of what were your favorite meals, and whether that is a bread product, a pizza product, to make it easier to bring the family along, I think that's fine. But if you're having 5 to 10 servings of gluten-free grains, that will not be good.
No.
So that's why I said the target is nine servings of fruits and vegetables, 3 greens, 3 colors, 3 sulfur-rich. And my vets would say, like, is that per week or month, doc? And I'd laugh. I said, oh, no, that's per day. And so for men, yeah, that's pretty. They should be able to get to 9 cups. For women, if you're really petite, maybe it's 4 to 6 servings. So it depends on the gender and the size.
And so
So that's level
level
1.
1, and can we talk about the fats as well, real quick?
Oh, yeah. So at level 1, I'm just asking people to have healthy fats and to avoid the refined vegetable oils. The refined vegetable oils have a lot of hexane and solvents in the manufacturing process, and you can't get all of those solvents out. And those solvents are bad for us.
Yes, and I think it's once
So,
people watch a
I-
video of how like canola oil is produced or soybean oil, then I think this is the last thing you feel like eating. But we're so disconnected from even the process of how things are made that you feel like, oh, it's an oil
Correct.
from a soybean, and then you actually see, oh no, is that how it's made? That's actually
Yeah,
disgusting.
yeah. Well, for hundreds of years, those compounds were poisonous, were toxins. They were used for industry. You would never have fed them to livestock or to humans. Then, and when we first started cooking, we were roasting things over open fire. We might have boiled them in a soaked skin for water. It's relatively recently that we've been cooking. And if we fried anything, it would have been with a animal rendered fat, which, by the way, is a mixture of saturated fat and the monounsaturated fat that is typical of olive oil. So it would have been animal rendered fats. We have a long history, 200,000 years, well, 100,000 years of using those kind of fats. We've been using olive oil, not quite as long. That's cold expressed olive oil. And then these refined oils, those really got infused with the development of the lipid hypothesis, which was funded by the sugar industry, by the way, because the epidemiologic evidence incriminates sugar more effectively than it incriminates fat as the as the main driver for heart disease.
Crazy. So this is level 1. How can we progress to level 2?
Okay, so then at level 2, then we start talking much more explicitly about the benefits of meat, of fish, of poultry. We talk about organ meats, liver, heart, tongue, gizzards. Tongue is just a fabulous meat. That was one of our favorites growing up. And we'd have liver once a week. Heart also tremendously delicious and good for you. Then we talk about fermented foods. Again, we've been fermenting our food for as long as we've been cooking our food, and that was a big part of storing food. Was fermenting, whether it was the meats, the dairy products, and the vegetables. And refrigeration and freezers, that's again a relatively recent phenomenon. And having all of that fermented food helped populate our gut with really health promoting microbiome. Then I talk about nuts and seeds, which do have helpful vitamin E and helpful omega-6 fatty acids. They can also have some anti-nutrients, some lectins that can be a problem. So I talk about sprouting them, soaking them, germinating those seeds so they're less of a problem, or the possibility of avoiding those nuts and seeds. And then the third level is the ketogenic diet. So that's lower in carbs, and that is between 30 and 50 grams of carbs. That depending on the clinical circumstance, I may really prefer that people do a ketogenic diet. And then we have the elimination diet, which takes out more of the lectins. That also takes out nightshades, all legumes, all grains, and nuts and seeds.
Beautiful. So I want to just like highlight that for everyone who's listening. Even if you don't, obviously, this diet not only has worked for you with MS, but it has been proven to work with a lot of people, with women and men with autoimmune diseases, right? So if you can just give us an idea.
Yeah. This has been
So what are the conditions
very
that have
helpful
been proven for this diet to be effective for?
It's been very helpful for anxiety, for depression, for cognitive decline. It's been helpful for a wide variety of autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, inflammatory bowel disease, and Hashimoto's, psoriasis. And we've also had our people with mild cognitive impairment have some significant improvement as well, and early Alzheimer's. People with Parkinson's, it's always much easier the sooner people make these changes. And likewise, for people with MS, the sooner you make the changes, the easier recovery is. However, we have had people with progressive MS who were, even more disabled than I was, that they were completely wheelchair dependent, that they could, with assistance, stand for just a brief few seconds and pivot onto the toilet or pivot onto bed, who discover my work, start taking every one of my classes so they can be part of the classes and listen, have a chance to ask the Q&A. So she's 3 years into this. And she's so excited. She is walking with a walker.
Wow.
And she would tell us that she was so excited because she was able to stand for 30 seconds. And then she was able to stand for a minute, then able to stand for 2 minutes.
And you're like, I know what it's like.
A couple steps.
So, quick question, because there's a lot of, I guess, alignment with a lot of diets that are out there, but I guess the surprising decision is on the eggs, right? Like, why would you?
Yeah.
What was the
So eggs are eggs absolutely are a superfood, and there's a lot of choline, a lot of great nutrition, particularly in the yolk. The albumin has the protein. However, if you have an abnormal immune response, it's revving up your autoimmune processes. Mm-hmm. And for me, eggs rev up my autoimmune processes and causes severe pain. So I want people to take the eggs out, preferably for 3 months, but at least 2 weeks at a minimum, and then reintroduce them. And I'd say about a third of my folks, when they take the eggs out, can reintroduce them and they do fine. But 2/3 who are quite surprised to discover that their headaches are worse, their pain is worse, they can't see as well, they're more irritable, that they have some either mental symptom or physical symptoms. They go, oh, I guess Wahls was right. Eggs are a problem.
I have
and the other option is to do a food sensitivity test, and that may let you know what are the foods that are a problem for you.
Yeah. So I did a food sensitivity test, and that's where eggs came up for me as being sensitive to. But I there's a part of me, I'm like, God dang, I really wish I could eat eggs because I love the flavor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I loved eggs.
Yeah. So.
But
It is what it is. So just real quick, so for someone listening, okay, cool. Like, it's just super exciting. I don't need to be on autoimmune diet. I don't have to have an autoimmune condition to jump on the Wahls protocol diet, because I can just prevention is the best cure, right? So I can do all of these.
Prevention is the best. We have millions that have prediabetes, metabolic syndrome, diabetes. We know that a majority of our young children have anxiety, depression, some sort of learning challenge. And we know that the whole society has more anxiety and depressive symptoms since 2020. So for all of those conditions, improving your diet will be super helpful. I tell people, yes, I think the research is best for keto and paleo diets. If you can't do that, but you could do a Mediterranean diet, then do that.
Okay.
I would much rather you do a paleo or a keto, but I certainly want you to not be doing the standard American diet.
Yes.
Because the evidence is so overwhelming that we're accelerating aging, we're accelerating the risk of all of these chronic diseases, including cancers.
So real quick, if you can just walk us through before we go of what a typical menu for a day would look like. What do you have for breakfast? Because people like actionable items.
Oh, sure.
What does it even
So what I did this morning, I had green tea. And so I just had green tea. And I took my supplements. That's what I did for the morning. Then for lunch, I had a bunch of pickled herring. So just pickled herring. This evening, and I'll use what I had last night. We made taco meat, and we had a cauliflower rice, chopped onions, and that was, and then a bunch of greens.
Oh, super simple.
Super simple. I'm also very much into cooking just a couple times a week, and so I'll make soups and stews, and then I'll can them and then have them in the refrigerator. And so tonight we'll probably have collards and lamb. I like making a saag paneer, sort of curried dishes with a nut cheese and a bison or a lamb meat for the meat.
I'm inviting myself
really quite delicious.
over.
Absolutely. Another favorite meal is liver and onions. We love liver and onions.
It's what I grew up on in Poland. So in Poland, you have your liver once a week. Like there's no kind of
Absolutely
non-negotiable. And obviously, moving to the US, I stopped taking it because it was like obviously, grandma's not forcing me anymore. And now I'm realizing like, wait, like I know Dr. Weston Price's work and organ meat, and I was like, oh dang, there's so much research showing organ meat is the move.
Organ meat and your liver once a week, really good for you. Some of my carnivore friends want people to have a pound of liver a week. I think that's too much. 6 to 8 ounces is all that I would do, because I don't want you to overdo on retinol. But it is the most nutrient-dense meat. Great sources of B vitamins. The only nutrient that meat will be low in is vitamin C. And you get that from plants, and it has to be raw plants or fermented plants, because when you cook your meat or cook your vegetables, you destroy the vitamin C.
Wow, super, super inspiring. It's so interesting that the most inspiring people always had to go through hardship and the hard way and learn on their own of how to how to take your health back into their own hands.
Yeah.
And so beautiful with everything you have done for yourself, and to others.
No. Can I put a call out
Yes,
for
please.
people to help us recruit our?
Yes.
Yep. So we do clinical trials. I test diet and lifestyle. We have a great study comparing a ketogenic diet, a paleo diet to usual diet in people with relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. You come to Iowa City. We do the assessments. We randomize you to either keto, paleo, or usual diet. You come back in 3 months, then come back again in 2 years. This will be the longest study that's been done in the study of MS. We'll have no contrast MRIs, so we can see what's happening to brain volume. That'll be super exciting. We'll enroll 156 people. My study team tells me that we're down to the last 24, I think. So if you go to terrywahls.com/MS study, there'll be a yellow box. Click that box and complete the screening survey. You'll have a chance to tell us that you want to be part of our database for other future studies because sometimes we do just survey-only studies. And then you could be part of this study. We'll begin telling you about the study, get the consent, and make arrangements for you to come in.
Oh,
Again, it's terrywalls.com/MS study. And if you're already on some therapeutic diet, that's okay. You just have to be willing to be randomized such that if you're already on a, we'll say a paleo diet, like, okay, you can still be in the study. But if you're randomized to the keto diet, you're going to go switch to be on the keto diet. If you're in the usual diet, you get to keep doing your usual diet. If you're a vegetarian, you have to be willing to, if you are randomized to the paleo diet or the keto diet, that you will begin the keto diet, eating meat, the paleo diet, eating meat, fish, or poultry. And we do have some vegetarians that have like, okay, they will do this and they'll see what happens.
Yeah. The thing is, I think a lot of times people would, what if you just try it for a few weeks? If it doesn't work out, you can always go back, right? Like it.
Well, once you get into once you get into the study, we're going to keep you for the whole 2 years, and it's a real world study. We will work with you to help you figure out how to make this work for you and your family. And our dietitians are, I think, great support to help people navigate how I adapt these principles to the culinary taste that my family has, and because that is somewhat of a complicated conversation you're having with the family, because we do encourage people to have the whole family agree with what we're going to add and increase and what we're going to reduce.
Oh, so beautiful. Dr. Terry, thank you so much again, and this is super exciting. Thank you for your time, and thank you for everything you're doing. It was such an honor to have you as a guest on the show.